The vampire king of the Northern Reach hadn't set foot in a human grocery store in over a century. But his 6-year-old son had begged to see where real people bought their food, and Lucian Noctis had never been able to deny the boy anything. What he didn't expect was for one quiet question from his child to unravel 300 years of carefully constructed emotional armor. "Papa," Adrian whispered, tugging on his father's coat sleeve. "Why is that lady crying?" Lucian followed his son's gaze across the fluorescent-lit aisle. A young woman stood before the infant formula section, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. In her trembling hands, she held a can of baby formula. As they watched, she placed it back on the shelf with the careful precision of someone performing a sacred ritual, then walked away. She didn't beg. She didn't ask for help. She simply walked away, one hand pressed to her mouth to muffle the sound of her breaking heart. "Papa?" Adrian's voice was smaller now, confused. "Why didn't she take it? Doesn't her baby need to eat?" Lucian Noctis, ancient vampire king, ruler of the Northern Territories, a creature who had seen empires rise and fall, found himself unable to answer his son's question. Because he was too busy following the crying woman home. Act 1. The question that changed everything. Lucian had brought Adrian to the 24-hour supermarket late enough that the sun was long gone but early enough that humans still moved through the aisles. His son had been fascinated by human customs lately, a phase, Lucian had assured himself. The boy had vampire blood running through his veins, but his mother had been human, and sometimes Adrian asked questions that pierced straight through Lucian's ancient heart. The woman was young, maybe 25 in human years. She stood in front of the baby formula with the posture of someone who had forgotten how to hope. Her clothes were clean but worn, a jacket with frayed cuffs, jeans with pale spots where the denim had been washed too many times. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the kind that came from weeks of sleepless nights and worry that never stopped. In her arms, wrapped in a faded baby carrier, a tiny infant slept. The child couldn't have been more than 3 months old. Lucian watched as the woman reached for a can of formula. Her hand shook. She picked it up, turned it over to check the price, and her face crumpled. She set it back down. Reached for a cheaper brand. Her fingers traced the label as if reading it could change the numbers on the price tag. Then she opened her wallet. Even from 15 feet away, Lucian's supernatural vision could see inside. Empty. Completely empty except for a few coins in the change pocket. The woman counted the coins. Once, twice, 3 times, as if hoping that repetition would somehow multiply their value. It didn't. She had 87 cents. The formula cost $19. Lucian watched as her face went through a transformation he'd seen countless times across centuries. The moment when a human being realizes they've reached the absolute limit of what they can do. The moment when fight or flight gives way to something else entirely. Acceptance. She placed the formula back on the shelf. Her movements were careful, deliberate, almost reverent. She lined it up perfectly with the other cans, making sure the label faced forward. Then she bent her head and pressed her lips to her sleeping baby's forehead. The kiss lasted 5 seconds, maybe 6. In those seconds, Lucian saw every ounce of love in the universe condensed into one gesture. That's when the tears started. Silent tears that streaked down her face as she turned and walked away. She didn't make a sound. Didn't draw attention to herself. Just walked toward the exit with her empty wallet and her hungry baby and her shattered dignity held together by nothing but willpower. "Papa!" Adrian's voice was thick with confusion and something that sounded like pain. "Why is that lady crying?" Lucian found his voice. "I don't know, little one. But her baby needs food. You told me babies need special milk." "Yes." "Then why didn't she take it?" "Because she has no money," Lucian thought. Because the world is cruel and indifferent. Because sometimes love isn't enough. But what he said was, "I don't know." Adrian pulled his hand free from his father's and took 3 steps toward the formula section. His small face was scrunched up in thought, the way it always was when he was trying to solve a problem too big for a 6-year-old mind. "We should give her money, Papa. We have lots of money." "We can't just give people money, Adrian." "Why not?" It was a fair question. One Lucian didn't have a good answer for. Because Humans have pride. She might not accept it. But her baby is hungry. The simple, devastating logic of a child. Lucian looked toward the exit. The woman was gone, disappeared into the November night. "Come," he said, scooping Adrian into his arms. "We're leaving. But we didn't buy anything. We're not here to shop anymore." "What are we doing?" Lucian moved toward the exit with the supernatural speed of his kind, careful to keep it just below the threshold of human perception. "We're making sure she gets home safely." "And then what?" Lucian didn't answer. He didn't know yet. All he knew was that his son's question, "Why is she crying?" had opened something in his chest that he'd kept locked for over a century. Since the night his human wife had died giving birth to Adrian. Since the night he'd held his newborn son and promised to protect him from every pain in the world. He'd forgotten, somehow, that there were other children in the world. Other parents struggling. Other humans choosing dignity over survival. The woman was 3 blocks ahead, walking with her head down against the cold wind. Lucian followed from the rooftops, Adrian held securely against his chest. "Papa, why are we on the roof?" "Better vantage point." "Are we heroes? Like in my storybooks?" Lucian looked down at the woman below. She'd stopped to adjust the baby carrier, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. She was crying still, silent tears that froze on her cheeks. "No, little one. We're not heroes." "Then what are we?" Lucian watched the woman start walking again, her steps slow and careful on the icy sidewalk. "We're learning," he said quietly. "We're learning what it means to care." The woman walked for 43 minutes. Lucian timed it, his supernatural senses tracking every stumbling step, every pause to catch her breath, every adjustment of the baby carrier that grew heavier with each block. Adrian had fallen asleep against his father's chest, lulled by the rhythm of movement and the cold night air. She lived in a neighborhood Lucian had never visited. The kind of place where streetlights flickered more often than they glowed. Where buildings leaned against each other like exhausted soldiers. Where the American dream had curdled into something bitter and forgotten. The woman stopped in front of a building that should have been condemned. For stories of crumbling brick and broken windows. A rusted fire escape that looked like it would collapse if you breathed on it too hard. She climbed the front steps, fumbled with keys that didn't want to work in a lock that had given up, and finally disappeared inside. Lucian waited on the rooftop across the street. 30 seconds later, a light flickered on in a 4th-floor window. No elevator in this building, which meant she just climbed 4 flights of stairs with an infant and a heart full of despair. Through the window, thin curtains that did nothing to block his supernatural vision, Lucian watched her enter a studio apartment barely larger than his walk-in closet. The space was meticulously clean. Desperately clean. The kind of clean that comes from having nothing else to control in your life except the arrangement of your few possessions. A mattress on the floor in one corner. A makeshift crib constructed from a laundry basket and folded blankets. A hot plate on top of a mini-fridge. A single chair at a table that held a notebook, a pen, and 3 envelopes marked "Final Notice" in red letters. The woman laid the baby gently in the basket crib. The infant stirred, began to whimper. The woman tried to nurse, but Lucian could hear her soft sob of frustration when nothing came. Malnutrition had stolen her milk supply. She stood and walked to the mini-fridge. Opened it. Inside, half a loaf of bread, a jar with maybe 2 tablespoons of peanut butter left, and 3 packets of instant oatmeal. The woman took out 1 packet of oatmeal. She boiled water on the hot plate, mixed the oatmeal until it cooled, and fed it to her baby with a plastic spoon. Tiny amounts. Barely anything. But it was all she had. The baby ate, then cried again. Still hungry. Always hungry. The woman sat on the floor with her back against the wall and pulled the baby into her arms. She rocked slowly, humming a lullaby that sounded Romanian or Bulgarian, Eastern European, definitely. The same kind of lullabies Lucian's own mother had sung to him 300 years ago, before the world had gone dark and cold. Adrian stirred against Lucian's chest. "Papa? Is the baby okay?" Lucian looked at his son, safe and warm and fed, dressed in clothes that cost more than this woman probably made in a month. "No, little one. The baby is hungry. Can we help now? I don't know how. It was the truth. Lucian Noctis had commanded armies, had accumulated wealth that could fund small nations, had negotiated with creatures far more dangerous than any human, but he had no idea how to help one struggling woman without making it worse. If he left money at her door, she'd think it was charity. She'd proven in the grocery store that she'd rather starve than beg. He thought of his wife, Elena. Human, stubborn, brilliant Elena who had loved him despite knowing what he was. She would have known what to do. She'd always known how to navigate the complexity of human pride and human need. But Elena was gone, dead these 6 years, and Lucian had spent those years building walls around his heart so high that even he couldn't see over them anymore. Papa, she's crying again. Lucian looked back at the window. The woman had her face buried in her baby's hair, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I tried, she whispered to the child who couldn't understand. I tried so hard. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Something in Lucian's chest cracked. Not broke, cracked. The first fracture in a wall that had stood for over a century. We're going to help her, he said to Adrian. But we're going to do it right. How? I don't know yet. But we're going to figure it out. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus, his human business manager. My lord. Marcus answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. I need you to find everything you can about a woman. Lucian gave him the address. Name, background, why she's here, what she needs. Everything. I need it by tomorrow night. Of course. May I ask why? Lucian looked at the woman in the window, still rocking her hungry child, still humming through her tears. Because my son asked me a question I couldn't answer, Lucian said. And I'm tired of not having answers. Act 2. The Discovery. Marcus called at sunset the next evening. Lucian answered before the first ring finished, Adrian playing quietly with wooden blocks in the corner of his study. Her name is Irina Dalka, Marcus said without preamble. 24 years old. Romanian immigrant. She's been in the country for 18 months. Lucian felt something tighten in his chest. Irina. It meant peace in Romanian. He wondered if she'd ever known any. Continue. She came here on a work visa, sponsored by a restaurant group. Met a man, James Chin, who seemed legitimate at first. They had a child together 8 months ago. Baby girl named Sophia. Sophia. Little wisdom. Lucian looked at Adrian, who'd stopped playing to listen. The father? Lucian asked, though he already knew this wouldn't be a happy story. Disappeared the day Irina told him she was pregnant. Turned out he was married. Had a whole other family across town. Irina tried to report him for abandonment, but her visa was tied to her restaurant job, and when she got too pregnant to work the heavy shifts, they let her go. Lucian's fingers tightened on the phone. She lost her visa. She's in legal limbo. Applied for asylum, applied for hardship status, applied for everything she could. All of it's tied up in the immigration courts. Could take years. And in the meantime? She works under the table. Cash only. 3 jobs when she can get them. Cleaning offices at night, washing dishes at a diner in the morning, and sometimes doing alterations for a tailor in the afternoons. She carries Sophia with her everywhere because she can't afford childcare. Lucian closed his eyes. He could see it perfectly. The young woman sleeping 3 hours a night. Working herself to exhaustion. Choosing between feeding herself and feeding her child. The formula I saw her put back? Her milk supply dried up last month. Stress and malnutrition. The free clinic gave her samples, but they ran out. She's been stretching what she has by mixing in oatmeal and water. It's not enough. Sophia's falling behind on her growth curve. Adrian had abandoned his blocks and come to stand beside his father's chair. Is that the crying lady, Papa? Lucian nodded. Why doesn't she have help? Marcus heard the question through the phone. Your son is wise, my lord. The answer is that sometimes the systems we build to help people become the systems that trap them instead. I want you to set up assistants, Lucian said. Quietly. I'll handle the delivery myself. After Lucian hung up, Adrian climbed into his lap. Papa, what does compelled mean? Lucian sighed. His son was too perceptive. It means I made someone forget something using vampire magic. Why? To protect her. And to protect myself. Did it hurt her? No. She just forgot she ever met me. Adrian frowned, his small face serious. But that's sad, Papa. What if she wanted to remember? I didn't give her that choice. Was that wrong? Lucian looked at his son. 6 years old and already asking questions that cut to the bone. Yes, he admitted. It was wrong. I was scared and I made a choice that took something from her. Even if it was just a memory. Can you give it back? I don't know if I should. Sometimes not remembering is a kindness. But sometimes, Adrian said slowly, clearly working through an idea, remembering means you know someone cares about you. Even if they couldn't stay. Lucian pulled his son close. When did you get so wise? Mama used to say that remembering love is never wrong. Even when it hurts. Elena. Always Elena, still teaching him lessons from beyond the grave. Your mother was right, Lucian whispered into Adrian's hair. Papa? Yes. Can we go see if Irina and Sophia are okay? Just to check. Lucian should have said no. Should have kept his distance, waited for Marcus to set up the proper channels, approached this logically and carefully. Instead, he said, "Get your coat." They returned to the rooftop across from Irina's building. Through the thin curtains, Lucian could see Irina sitting on the floor with Sophia in her lap. She was singing again, that same Eastern European lullaby. But tonight her voice was hoarse, strained. Sophia was crying. Not the normal fussy cry of a baby who wanted attention. This was the desperate, exhausted cry of genuine hunger. Irina tried to nurse again. Failed again. She stood and walked to the mini fridge. Opened it. Lucian's supernatural vision catalogued the contents. 1 packet of instant oatmeal. That was it. That was all the food in her apartment. She made the oatmeal, let it cool, fed it to Sophia 1 tiny spoonful at a time. The baby ate desperately, but the portion was so small. When it was gone, Sophia cried harder. Shoo, Iuberia mea, Irina whispered, her voice breaking. Shoo, my love. I know you're hungry. Tomorrow, I promise. Tomorrow Mama will have money. Papa, Adrian whispered. We should help now. Right now. I know. Then why aren't we? Because I don't know how, Lucian thought. Because what she needs is more than money. She needs a system that doesn't fail her. But he could give her tonight. He could give her formula and diapers and food. He could give her one night where she didn't have to choose between paying rent and feeding her child. Stay here, Lucian told Adrian. Where are you going? To do what I should have done yesterday. Lucian dropped from the rooftop and landed silently in the alley. There was a convenience store 2 blocks away, one of those places that charged too much for everything but stayed open when nothing else would. He bought formula. The expensive kind. 6 cans. Diapers. Baby food. Regular groceries, bread, peanut butter, pasta, sauce, vegetables, fruit. He bought everything he saw that a mother and baby might need, loaded it all into boxes and carried it back. Up 4 flights of stairs. Past neighbors who pretended not to see the strange man with too pale skin carrying boxes like they weighed nothing. To a door with peeling paint and a lock that barely worked. He set the boxes down carefully. Then he knocked once, soft enough that it might have been mistaken for the building settling, and disappeared into the shadows before Irina could reach the door. From the rooftop, he watched her open the door. Watched her stare at the boxes. Watched her look left, then right down the empty hallway. She dragged the boxes inside, her movements frantic now. She tore open the first box and saw the formula. Her hands flew to her mouth. Then she did something Lucian didn't expect. She left the boxes by the door, walked to her window, and looked out at the night sky. Multimesque, she whispered to the darkness. Thank you. Then she closed the curtain. Lucian returned to Adrian on the rooftop across the street. His son looked up at him with shining eyes. Did she get the food? Yes. Is she happy? Through the window, Lucian could see Irina preparing a bottle of formula with shaking hands. Sophia's cries quieted as she began to drink, really drink, for the first time in days. Yes, Lucian said. She's happy. Then why do you look sad, Papa? Because she thanked the sky instead of looking for her benefactor, Lucian thought. Because she expected help to come from God or fate or chance, never from another person. I'm not sad, little one. I'm thinking. About what? About how I'm going to help her without making her feel helpless, Lucian thought. About how one question from my son has made me feel more human than I have in a century. I'm thinking, Lucian said aloud, about how to do better. They stayed on the rooftop until Irina finally slept, Sophia full and content in her basket crib. Only then did Lucian carry Adrian back to their car. Will we come back tomorrow, Papa? Yes. Every day. Lucian looked back at the building one more time. At the window where a young mother had finally found a few hours of peace. Every day, he promised. Until she doesn't need us anymore. Act 3. The collision. The boxes appeared every 3 days for 2 weeks. Lucian was careful. He timed them for when Irina was at work. Each box contained exactly what she needed. Formula, diapers, groceries, and one non-essential item, a book in Romanian, a small toy for Sophia, a warm scarf as winter deepened. Things that said, "You are seen," without saying, "You are pitied." For 2 weeks, Irina accepted the deliveries in silent, reverent gratitude. She would bring the boxes inside, unpack them with trembling hands, and whisper her thanks to the empty air. But Lucian saw the shift happening. Through his nightly vigils on the rooftop, Adrian often asleep against his chest, he watched Irina begin to question the gifts. She would hold items up to the light, turning them over as if looking for hidden messages. She started keeping a notebook specifically to track the deliveries, trying to find a pattern. "For you," she wrote on one page. "Why are you helping me?" On another. And on the third page, the question that made Lucian's dead heart ache. "What do you want from me?" She'd been conditioned to believe that help always came with a price. The world had taught her to be suspicious, and Lucian hated that he couldn't prove her wrong. Then came the night when everything changed. Lucian arrived at the rooftop to find Irina's window dark. It was early evening, early for her to be asleep. He extended his senses, searching for her heartbeat. Not there. Sophia's rapid infant heartbeat was present, but Irina's steady rhythm was gone. Panic, sharp and unexpected, flooded through him. "Papa!" Adrian stirred, sensing his father's distress. "What's wrong?" "She's not home." Lucian closed his eyes and reached out with his supernatural senses, tracking the patterns he'd memorized over 2 weeks of watching. There, 6 blocks north. Her heartbeat was racing, elevated with fear and exertion. He scooped Adrian into his arms and moved across the rooftops with inhuman speed, following the thread of her presence. He found her in an alley behind the diner where she worked mornings. She wasn't alone. 3 men had her cornered. One held her purse, the small, worn bag she'd carried to the grocery store that first night. The contents were spilled across the dirty ground. Her wallet, still nearly empty, her keys, a photo of Sophia, and a small bundle of cash that couldn't have been more than $60. "Please," Irina was saying, her voice steady despite her obvious terror. Her accent was thicker under stress. "Please, that's all I have. Take it. Just take it and go. That's all." One of the men laughed. "This ain't even worth our time, sweetheart." "Then let me go." "Nah, see, now we gotta make it worth our time somehow." He stepped closer. Irina stepped back, her shoulders hitting the brick wall. Lucian set Adrian down on the fire escape above them. "Stay here. Don't look." "Papa." "Adrian. Stay." The command in his voice was absolute. Adrian nodded, his eyes wide. Lucian dropped into the alley. He didn't bother with subtlety. One moment the men were advancing on Irina. The next, 2 of them were unconscious on the ground, and Lucian held the third by his throat, lifted 3 feet off the ground. "She said please." Lucian's voice was conversational, almost pleasant. "You should have listened." The man's eyes were wide with terror. He'd seen Lucian's eyes, not bothering to hide the crimson that marked him as other, as predator, as death. "I'm going to put you down now," Lucian continued. "And you're going to walk away, aren't you?" The man nodded frantically. Lucian released him. The man stumbled, looked at his unconscious friends, and ran without looking back. Silence fell in the alley. Lucian turned to face Irina. She was pressed against the wall, her chest heaving, staring at him with a mixture of shock and recognition. Recognition. You, she breathed. Lucian froze. You know me? The grocery store. 2 weeks ago. You were there with a little boy. She glanced up at the fire escape where Adrian watched, wide-eyed. With him? Yes. You've been following me. It wasn't a question. Yes. Irina's expression shifted from shock to understanding to something that looked almost like resignation. The boxes. That's you. You're the one leaving the boxes. Lucian nodded slowly. Why? Because my son asked me a question I couldn't answer. Irina blinked. What? He saw you in the grocery store. Saw you crying. Asked me why you were returning the formula instead of taking it. Lucian took a careful step forward, hands visible and non-threatening. I didn't have a good answer. So I followed you home. And when I saw how you lived, when I saw you feeding your daughter oatmeal because you had nothing else, you decided I needed saving? There was an edge to her voice. Not quite anger, but something sharp and defensive. No, Lucian said carefully. I decided my son was right to ask why no one was helping. And I decided I wanted to be the one who did. I know you don't need charity. That's why I've been careful. That's why everything I left was anonymous. I wasn't trying to make you feel small. I was trying to make sure you and Sophia survived. Irina stared at him for a long moment. Who are you? Someone who understands what it means to protect a child when the whole world feels like it's working against you. You're not human. Again, not a question. Her eyes had caught the inhuman speed, the strength, the way he'd moved like shadow and struck like lightning. No. What are you? Lucian hesitated. He could lie. Could compel her to forget this entire encounter. Could erase himself from her memory again and continue helping from the shadows. But Adrian was watching from above. And Adrian had asked him once why lying was wrong if it protected people. Because Lucian had told his son, protection without honesty is just another kind of cage. I'm a vampire, he said simply. Irina didn't scream. Didn't run. She just nodded slowly, as if this explained everything. The eyes, she said. I thought it was the streetlight. But no. They're really red. Yes. And you drink blood. Yes. But not from innocence. Never from people who don't deserve it. Like those men. Like those men. Lucian glanced at the two still unconscious attackers. They'll wake up with no memory of this and a sudden, inexplicable urge to turn themselves in for outstanding warrants. A ghost of a smile touched Irina's lips. Then it faded. Why me? There are thousands of struggling mothers in this city. Why did you choose me? Because my son saw you first. And because, Lucian stopped. Because what? Because 7 years ago, I think you saved my life. Irina's eyes widened. What? I was attacked. Injured badly. I collapsed in an alley during a rainstorm. A young woman found me. She stopped to help. She pressed her scarf to my wound, talked to me to keep me conscious, stayed with me in the freezing rain until I could heal. Irina's hand flew to her mouth. The man in the alley. That was you. You remember? Fragments. I thought I dreamed it because the next day I couldn't remember your face. Couldn't remember how I got home. There were hours just gone. I compelled you to forget. To protect myself and you. But I never forgot you. You tried to help me back then too. There was a letter about a scholarship. I thought it was a mistake. That it wasn't really meant for me. It was meant for you. But life got in the way. My grandmother. She got sick. I know. And then I met James, and he seemed so kind, and then Sophia, her voice broke. And now I'm here. In an alley. Being robbed. Being rescued by a vampire who's been leaving formula at my door. She started to laugh. It was a slightly hysterical sound, but real. Genuine. This is insane, she said, wiping tears from her eyes. This is absolutely insane. Yes. I should be terrified of you. Yes. But I'm not. Why not? Irina looked up at the fire escape where Adrian watched with worried eyes. Because you brought your son. Monsters don't bring their children to watch them work. From above, Adrian called down softly, Papa, is the lady okay? Irina's expression softened. Yes, little one. I'm okay. Are you Irina? With baby Sophia? Yes. How do you know my name? Papa talks about you. He says you're very brave. Lucian felt heat rise in his face, an old human reflex that apparently survived vampirism. Irina turned back to him, something shifting in her eyes. You talk about me? Adrian asks questions. Many questions. About why people struggle. About why we have so much when others have so little. About what it means to help. And what answers do you give him? Mostly I tell him I don't know. But that we should try anyway. Irina bent down and began gathering her scattered belongings. Lucian knelt to help her. Their hands brushed over the photograph of Sophia, and Irina froze. Your hands are cold, she said softly. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's just strange. To have something so obviously not human be so careful with my things. They stood simultaneously. Irina clutched her purse, her $60 recovered, though Lucian suspected that money was already spoken for. What happens now? She asked. Now I walk you home. Make sure you're safe. And the boxes? Do you want them to stop? Irina was quiet for a long moment. I should say yes. I should tell you I can take care of myself and Sophia without help from strangers. Especially strangers who are vampires. But Sophia needs formula. And I need. She trailed off. What do you need, Irina? I need to know this is real. That you're not going to disappear or change your mind or ask me for something I can't give. Lucian understood. She needed certainty in a life that had offered her none. I'm not going anywhere, he said. And I don't want anything from you except to know that you and Sophia are safe. But why do you care so much? Because my son asked why you were crying. And because I lost someone I loved 6 years ago, and it made me forget that there were other people in the world worth protecting. Irina's eyes softened. Your wife? Yes. She died giving birth to Adrian. I'm sorry. So much. Every day. Lucian looked up at his son. But he reminds me why she mattered. Why any of this matters. He sees the world the way she did, as a place worth saving, one person at a time. He sounds like a good boy. He is. Too good for a father like me, probably. I doubt that. They looked at each other in the dim alley. A vampire king and a struggling immigrant mother. Two parents trying to protect their children in a world that made no promises. Let me walk you home, Lucian said. This time, Irina nodded. Okay. As they walked through the cold November night, Adrian between them, the boy had climbed down from the fire escape to take Irina's hand with absolute trust. Lucian felt something he hadn't experienced in 6 years. Not the desperate, frantic hope of a man trying to save his dying wife. But quiet, steady hope. The kind that says maybe tomorrow will be better. Maybe helping one person is enough. Maybe caring about something other than your own pain is the first step back to being human. Even if you haven't been human in 300 years. Act 4. The building. 3 months passed in a rhythm that became as natural as breathing. Lucian's lawyers filed Irina's immigration papers. Expedited processing through channels that existed only for those with enough money and influence to access them. Within weeks, Irina had legal status, a 2-year visa with a path to permanent residency. The Chen family, faced with evidence of their attempts to bribe immigration officials, settled quickly. Formal acknowledgement of paternity. Child support. A legal agreement that they wouldn't contest Irina's custody. Irina took the money, but she didn't lie about what James had done. The agreement said she couldn't publicly defame them. It didn't say she couldn't tell the truth if asked. Now Lucian sat in his study reviewing architectural plans while Adrian sprawled on the rug, drawing pictures of the house he imagined. Papa, can Sophia's room have windows that face the sunrise? She's an infant, little one. She won't care about the sunrise. But when she's bigger, she will. And Irina likes mornings. She told me. Lucian smiled. His son had become inseparable from Irina and Sophia in recent weeks. Declared himself Sophia's big brother, and took the responsibility with utmost seriousness. Windows facing east. I'll tell the architects. The house Lucian was designing wasn't for him. This house was for Irina and Sophia. Close enough to his estate that he could protect them. Far enough that Irina would have independence. Her space. Her home. He'd offered to simply give it to her. She'd refused. They'd negotiated for 2 weeks before reaching a compromise. She would manage the estate, handle his household affairs, serve as Adrian's tutor in human customs and Romanian language. In exchange, she and Sophia would live rent-free in a house that would be deeded to Sophia when she turned 18. It's still too much, Irina had protested. You're teaching my son about humanity. You're giving him the childhood his mother wanted for him. There's no price tag on that. She'd finally agreed. Reluctantly. Mr. Noctis? Marcus appeared in the doorway. Ms. Dalka is here to see you. Irina entered with Sophia on her hip. The baby had grown in 3 months. Healthy, happy, hitting all her developmental milestones now that she was properly fed. Adrian. Sophia reached for him the moment she saw him. Adrian jumped up and carefully took her, cradling her with the seriousness of someone handling precious cargo. Come on, Sophia. I want to show you the picture I drew. He carried her to the corner, chattering about colors and shapes. Irina watched them with a soft expression. Then turned to Lucian. The house is beautiful, she said, looking at the plans. Too beautiful. Like a palace. It's a home. Lucian, what are we doing here? He looked at her directly. What do you mean? I mean, we're building this house. Raising our children together. Spending every evening talking. But we've never defined what this is. Does it need definition? Yes. Irina stepped closer. Because I need to know if this is real. If we're real. Or if I'm just another person you're helping out of obligation. Lucian stood and crossed to her. There's no obligation. Then what is it? You want to know how I feel about you? Yes. Lucian looked at her, this exhausted, fierce woman who'd somehow become the center of his world in 3 months, and told her the truth. I feel terrified. Because I spent 6 years building walls to protect myself from ever caring this much again. And you walked through them like they were mist. Lucian. I feel grateful. Because my son is happy for the first time since his mother died. Because I'm happy for the first time since she died. That's not. And I feel something I thought I'd never feel again. Something I don't have words for in English. Elena used to call it door. It's Romanian, yes? Irina nodded, her throat tight. It means longing. Missing someone or something deeply. Yes. But it's more than that, isn't it? It's wanting something so badly that the wanting becomes part of who you are. Yes. That's how I feel about you. Like you've become part of me without asking permission. Like the thought of you leaving creates a hole I don't know how to fill. Irina felt tears sliding down her face. That's not fair. To put that on me. I know. I'm sorry. You asked for honesty. I did. I just wasn't prepared for this much honesty. Lucian took a step closer. They were inches apart now. Close enough that Irina could feel the cold radiating from his skin. See the crimson flecks in his eyes that marked him as other. I think about you constantly, he said. Wonder if you're happy. If Sophia slept well. If you ate enough. If you're lonely. I'm not lonely anymore. But neither am I. That's what scares me most. Why does that scare you? Because I've lived 300 years. I'll live 300 more. But you're human. Mortal. And someday I'll have to watch you age and die like everyone else I've ever cared about. Irina reached up and touched his face. He went absolutely still. Then maybe, she said softly, we should focus on the present. On what we have now instead of what we'll lose later. Is there a present? A now? Or am I imagining this connection? You're not imagining it. Then what is this, Irina? What are we? She smiled through her tears. I think we're answering your son's question. Which question? Why was I crying? I was crying because I was alone and scared and didn't know how to survive. But I'm not alone anymore. I'm not scared. And I know exactly how to survive. How? With you. With Adrian and Sophia. With this family we've built from nothing. Lucian's hand came up to cover hers where it rested on his face. Are you sure? Because once we cross this line, once we name what this is, everything changes. Everything already changed. The moment your son saw me in that grocery store. The moment you followed me home. The moment you chose to care. She paused. I love you, Lucian. I've been trying not to. Trying to keep this practical and safe and undefined. But I love you. And I love Adrian. And we're already a family whether we call it that or not. Lucian pulled her close, wrapping her in arms that were cold but felt like home anyway. I love you too, he whispered into her hair. I love you so much it terrifies me. But love should be a little terrifying. They stood like that for a long moment. Through the window, they could hear Adrian teaching Sophia to clap. Hear their children's laughter mixing with evening birdsong. From the corner, Adrian called out, Miss Irina. Sophia is trying to eat my crayons. Irina laughed and went to rescue the art supplies. Lucian watched her go, this woman who'd entered his life because his son asked a simple question. That night, after Irina and Sophia had gone back to the apartment, they would move into the new house in 3 months. After Adrian had been tucked into bed, Lucian stood on his balcony looking out at the city. He was building a house for a woman who'd agreed to love him. Protecting a child who called his son brother. Creating a family from nothing but choice and care. His wife would have approved. We're doing it, Elena, he whispered to the night. We're building something beautiful. Just like you always wanted. The wind carried his words away. But somewhere in the space between heartbeats, Lucian could have sworn he heard her voice. I know. I'm so proud of you both. Epilogue. The question answered. 2 years later, Adrian stood in the grocery store, his hand tucked safely in his father's. At 8 years old, he was old enough now to understand more about what his father was. Old enough to know that most families weren't headed by 300-year-old vampires. Old enough to realize that his family was strange and complicated and absolutely perfect. Papa, look. He pointed to the formula aisle where a young woman stood, her hands shaking, counting money that wouldn't be enough. Lucian followed his son's gaze and felt his chest tighten with recognition. What do you see, Adrian? Someone who needs help. What kind of help? The kind we can give. The kind that matters. Lucian looked down at his son, his brilliant, compassionate, impossibly wise son, and smiled. Then let's help her. They approached quietly. Lucian's security team would handle the practical details, the anonymous delivery, the resources, the follow-up. But right now, in this moment, Lucian wanted his son to see what happened next. Excuse me, Adrian said to the woman. His voice was soft, kind. My papa and I wanted to help. The woman looked down at this child with ancient eyes and saw only kindness. Help how? With whatever you need. Because everyone needs help sometimes. And that's okay. The woman's eyes filled with tears. I don't understand. Lucian knelt down to her level. 2 years ago, my son asked me why a woman was crying in this exact aisle. That question changed our lives. Now we try to answer it as often as we can. By helping strangers? By making sure fewer people have to cry alone. Later, after they'd helped the woman, after they'd returned home to find Irina making dinner with Sophia, helping by banging pots, after they'd sat together as a family and shared their day, Adrian climbed into Lucian's lap. Papa? Yes, little one? Thank you for listening when I asked about Miss Irina. When I asked why she was crying. Thank you for asking. For seeing her when I would have walked past. Do you think Mama would be proud? Lucian looked across the room at Irina, dancing with Sophia in her arms, singing Romanian lullabies. Looked at the life they'd built from one question asked in kindness. Yes, he said. I think she'd be very proud. Of both of us. Adrian snuggled closer. I'm glad we found our family, Papa. Me too, little one. Me too. Outside, the The city sparkled with a million lights. Each one a story. Each one a struggle. Each one a life that might be changed by one simple question asked in kindness. Why are they crying? And more importantly, what are we going to do about it? For Lucian Noctis, Vampire King, the answer was simple. Everything. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. A grocery store at midnight. A child's innocent question. A vampire who'd forgotten what it meant to be human. Irina Dalka had been seconds away from giving up when a 6-year-old boy noticed her tears. She couldn't have known that those tears would lead to a family, to love, to a future she'd stopped believing in. Lucian Noctis had been a century deep into grief when his son asked a question he couldn't answer. He couldn't have known that following one crying woman home would teach him how to live again. But that's the thing about compassion. It doesn't ask permission. It sees suffering and simply asks, "What can I do?" And sometimes, that question is enough to change everything. So the next time you see someone struggling, in a grocery store, on a street corner, in the quiet desperation of everyday survival, remember this story. Remember that your kindness might be the difference between giving up and holding on. Remember that family is built, not born. Remember that the smallest question asked in love can become the foundation for something beautiful. Papa, why is she crying? Because she's alone. But not anymore. Never again. If you found hope in this story, leave a comment below. Tomorrow, I'm bringing you another tale of unexpected love and found family that you won't want to miss. Until then, remember, you never know whose life you might change just by choosing to care.